The Zoom broadcast for the next meeting is live. The meeting has not yet started until it's called to order, but please be aware your microphones are now live. Thank you.
Mary, did you say when we start again? When do we start again? Did you say? I'm sorry. I'm getting ready because I want to keep us on. Go.
We are ready. No, he went into surgery about 7:20. So I don't know. He told me that they told him it would take about an hour and a half. But yeah. So if I don't hear from him doing it, I'll call him at lunch just to follow up. Yeah. Mhm.
Good morning. We're getting ready to start the next committee meeting, please.
You need the gavel.
Good morning. My name is Fred Farias, and I'm chairman of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Before we call this meeting to order, I would like to announce that I have appointed Donna Williams as chair of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. I've also appointed Matthew Smith. Matthew, welcome. He's here. An ex officio member, and myself as a regular member to this committee. I would also like to pass the gavel now to Ms. Donna Williams to officially call the meeting of the Committee on Academic, Workforce, and Success to order. Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Donna Williams, and I am the chair of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. It is 10:23 a.m., July 21st, 2021. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Committee on Academic Workforce and Success. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast via internet. Before we would begin, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome those who are joining us via Zoom and ask that they observe the following etiquette. Please state your name before you speak, mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and keep background noises to a minimum. Please record in the minutes that we have a quorum. Agenda item number 2 is consideration of approval of the minutes for the April 21st, 2021 committee meeting. Do I have a motion for approval for the April 21st minutes?
So moved.
I have a motion by Director Wilson and a second by Director Emma. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 3 is public testimony on agenda items relating to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. We do not have any registered to testify, so we'll go to the next item. Agenda item number 4 is consideration of approval for the consent calendar. The consent calendar includes non-controversial items that we think can be approved without comment or discussion. This allows us to save time for other items that need more of our attention. Highlighted items in gray are the consent items on the agenda. We're going to take up the consent calendar in 3 parts. Approval of contracts and grants related to the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Gear Fund, non-rule consent items, and then the rule consent agenda items. Of course, any board member can request that an agenda item be added or removed from the consent calendar. The following items up for consideration and possible action to solicit and or enter into grants or awards of grants related to the GEAR funds are Agenda Item 501, consideration of adopting the request to extend the current contract with a higher ed artificial intelligence vendor for the Visual Advising Project, AVI, for a term of 1 year. Agenda Item 50, number 2, is consideration and possible action to extend the current contract for an open educational resource repository vendor for the OER text repository for a term of 1 year. Agenda Item 50, to establish and expand programs that address current workforce needs in high-priority sectors, job families, and occupations for regional and state economic development not to exceed $42.5 million. Agenda Item 507, for leadership development opportunities to encourage high-achieving students who are low income to take advantage of premier educational opportunities available through public colleges and universities and develop students as emerging leaders for the state of Texas not to exceed $7 million. Agenda Item 508, to the Texas Reskilling Support Fund for the purpose of establishing a set of awards to eligible students attending Texas higher education institutions not to exceed $6 million. Agenda Item 509, to fund the expansion of the Advised Tex College Advisory Program and AVI through contracts, grants, and interagency contracts with historically black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, and colleges and universities with large, low-income student populations not to exceed $4 million. Agenda item 5010, to solicit and/or enter into contracts with researchers and service providers to create an inventory of student success interventions and initiatives not to exceed $1.5 million. Are there any agenda items that anyone wants to remove from the gear-funded contracts portion of the consent calendar? Do I have a motion for approval of the gear-funded contracts portion of the consent calendar?
So moved.
So moved by Chairman Frias. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. Swartz. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. The additional agenda items listed on the non-rule consent calendar for this meeting are Agenda Item 5A, consideration of adopting the recommendation relating to the report on the effectiveness of the Open Educational Resources Grant Program, Senate Bill 810, the 85th Texas Legislature Regular Session, and Rider 55, 86th Texas Legislature Regular Session. Agenda Item 5C, report on activities of the Joint Admissions Medical Program. Agenda Item 5J, report on activities of Autism Grant Program. Agenda Item 5N, consideration of adopting the January 2021 Annual Compliance Report for institutions under a Certificate of Authorization, names beginning with A through O. Agenda Item 5P, consideration of adopting the appointment of members to the, number 1, Apply Texas Advisory Committee, number 2, Certification Advisory Council, number 3, Learning Technology Advisory Committee, and number 4, Lower Division Academic Course Guide Manual Advisory Committee. Agenda Item 5Q, consideration of approving the assurance of a request for applications for the, number 1, Autism Grant Program, number 2, Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Leadership Grant, number 3, Emergency and Trauma Care Education Partnership Program, and number 4, the Graduate Medical Education Expansion Program. Number 5, Graduate Medical Education Planning Grants Program, and number 6, the Statewide Preceptorship Programs. Are there any agenda items that anyone would like to add to the non-rule consent agenda calendar? Are there any items that anyone wants to remove from the non-rule consent calendar? Do I have a motion for approval for the non-rule consent calendar?
So moved.
I have a motion made by Director Wilson. I have a second.
Second, Sam Torn.
It's been seconded by Director Torrance. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Members, the next item on the consent calendar are the rules items. The rules placed on the consent calendar are those that are either technical conforming or implement non-controversial policies around which there is a consensus. Agenda Item 5R1, consideration of adopting proposed rules amendments to the Texas Administrative Code, Title 19, Chapter 1, Subchapter G, Rule 1.131, Subchapter H, Rule 1.138, Subchapter I, Rule 1.145, Subchapter O, Rule 1.188, and Subchapter P, Rule 1.195 of Board Rules concerning the advisory committees and their admonishment dates. Is there any rule that anyone wants to remove from the rules consent calendar? Do I have a motion for approval of the rules of the consent calendar? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Been moved.
Second.
And I have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion passes. Going back to the, did we pick up who made the motion and who made the second? Do I need to call their name? We're good? Okay. All right, thank you. Agenda item 5A was approved on consent. Agenda item 5B is the consideration of adopting the report regarding the initial review of the Texas Education Code, Chapter 51, Subchapter E3, House Bill 1735, 86th Texas Legislature Regular Session, Policy Compliance Requirements at Institutions of Higher Education. Dr. Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner of Workforce Education, will present this item and be available to answer any questions.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Item VB relates to an initial review of the Texas Education Code, Chapter 51, Subchapter E3, Compliance at Institutions of Higher Education. It is the product of House Bill 1735, passed in 2019 by the Texas legislature. The bill, along with similar bills, Senate Bill 212, were enacted to improve reporting and policies surrounding sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking at private and public and independent institutions of higher education. Mark Pale, Assistant Commissioner of Internal Audit and Compliance, and his team chose a sampling of 19 institutions for which review of 18 items were made. The institutions chosen included a mix of public institutions, private, independent, and higher education. The items reviewed included publications of institutional policies, resources provided to employees and students, procedures for documenting complaints, disciplinary processes, and required agreements and training. List of the institutions reviewed and the review items are included in the report. All 19 reviewed institutions were found to be substantially compliant. Recommendations for improvements were made to 2 institutions. Both institutions provided a response to each recommendation and a timeline for expected completion of the recommendations. As a reminder, substantial compliance is found when a post-secondary education institution has made a good faith effort to comply with the requirements under the administrative rules, provided that the deficiencies identified by the coordinating board can be readily corrected. No penalties were assessed during the initial year of compliance with either House Bill 1735 or Senate Bill 212. If you have any questions about the review, my colleague Mark Pale also is available for additional information. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Jackson? Do I have a motion to adopt the report regarding the initial review of the Texas Education Code, Chapter 51, Subchapter E3, House Bill 1735, 86th Texas Legislature Regular Session, Policy Compliance Requirements at Institutions of Higher Education? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Sam Torn.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5C was approved on consent agenda. Agenda item 5D is consideration of adopting the recommendation relating to funding appropriated to the Joint Admissions Medical Program for fiscal years 2022 and 2023. Dr. Paul Hersmeyer, Executive Director, Joint Admissions Medical Program, and Dr. Matthew Meeks, Executive Director, Texas Health Education Service, will provide an update and address questions. Dr. Stacy Silverman, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will also be available to answer questions. I understand
Okay, thank you. Are there slides available to show, or?
got it. We can see it.
Great, okay.
Dr. Meeks. This is Matthew Meeks, right? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, good morning, and thank you, Dr. Fred Fadias and Ms. Donna Williams and Council for allowing me to share with you about JAMP, along with some of the latest news and updates. And again, my name is Matthew Meeks. I'm the Executive Director of JAMP. I also have with me Paul Hermesmeyer, who's the Director of JAMP, and he's here to help answer any questions following this update. You can go to the next slide there. The Joint Admission Medical Program was established by the Texas legislature in 2001 through the efforts of Republican Senator Member Till Bivens from West Texas and Democrat Royce West from Dallas to assist certain economically disadvantaged students in preparing for and succeeding in medical school. The program provides undergraduate and medical school scholarships, summer undergraduate internships and stipends, and extensive MCAT preparation programming for students in the 70 participating undergraduate institutions throughout the state. That's 37 public and 33 private. JAMP provides funding to the public undergraduate institutions to build a broader pre-med curriculum and tutoring, mentoring programs which benefit JAMP students, as well as the general pre-medical population of the schools. So how are students selected for the program? The students are selected for participation in JAMP based on criteria established by the council, which include economic disadvantage factors, 27 credit hours of undergraduate coursework with at least a 3.25 grade point average, and an SAT or ACT score higher than the state average. Students who meet all continuing eligibility criteria are guaranteed admission to one of the 13 participating medical schools in Texas. 400 students applied last year, from which 100 students were selected. And since 2002, more than 5,000 undergraduate students have applied for entrance into JAMP, and more than 1,900 have been admitted. Extensive strides are taken to interview selected applicants before they are admitted to identify those who have both the cognitive and non-cognitive qualities expected of excellent physicians. And each year, the JAMP Council devotes significant funding to the process of interviewing students around the state. These interviews are conducted by medical school faculty administrators who travel to 5 hub sites where undergraduate students are interviewed. The program reevaluates admission criteria to ensure equity each year. And then on the next slide, let's just take a look at the program impact on our community. As of 2021, 654 JAMP students have graduated from medical school, of which 61% have entered primary care residency programs, which has been identified as a significant need for our state. This is compared to less than 50% of the general population of medical school graduates. Additionally, 65% were placed in residency programs in Texas, which increases the likelihood that they will stay in Texas for their career, serving the population of our state. In contrast to around 50% of non-JAMP students that are placed in residency programs outside of Texas. Therefore, JAMP is meeting needs in Texas in both the kind and numbers of physicians. The JAMP Council and program administrators are very proud of the successes of the Joint Admission Medical Program, and the process of educating physicians is a long and rigorous one. That we have more than 517 students currently in the pipeline is great news for Texas. These JAMP students will no doubt meet many needs of our state, caring for Texans in their hometowns, both rural and urban, and serving their needs in primary care settings and specialized clinics, and providing medical role models with backgrounds similar to their own. In closing, and as requested, if we go to the next slide, I wanted to share a couple of updates about JAMP. We added two new medical schools for this year. The University of Houston College of Medicine and Sam Houston State University College of Osteopathic Medicine. And we're excited for their mission and how they will be able to support JAMP and recruit students on their respective affiliated undergraduate campuses. And this year, as stated earlier, JAMP matriculated 84% of its students in the medical school, the highest percentage in our history. And this is a result of how program administrators and the council have worked so hard to identify students for the program and find every possible opportunity to provide support and services to motivate and encourage their success. Dr. Nguyen from UT Southwestern has been appointed council chair for this next biennium. We've already seen through his leadership and emphasis on enhancing recruitment and retention of students and consistently taking a look at the admissions practices to ensure equity and that the right and highest need students are offered admission into the program. And in response to the pandemic, we have worked to continue to provide JAMP enrichment through virtual means, including the summer internships and the medical school interviews. We are, however, optimistic that we will be able to return to in-person activities this next summer. And finally, as with many other programs in Texas, we did experience a 5% reduction in funding. This means that while we were able to add medical schools, we did not have the means to add additional students into the program, something that we do hope to do in the future. And just a quick note that JAMP has a strong program evaluation component in which we are asking key evaluation questions for the consistent improvement of the program to continue to find ways to better serve students, the pre-health community, and the people of Texas. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to provide this report and testimony. And you can go to the last there.
Thank you,
Okay.
We have feedback.
Sound like a rock star over there.
I know, that is weird. Maybe my cell phone is causing feedback or something. Let me put it way over there. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Meeks?
I had a quick comment. So as we know that the family physician shortages that we have, not only in the state of Texas, all over the country, but I noticed you're 61%, Mr. Meeks, of the students going through choosing residencies in family practice. I was just wondering, in terms of the interview process, although 61% is probably the highest I think you mentioned that you've had in a while, which is great, but I think it's very difficult sometimes to have students, when you interview them, kind of know what they want to do. And I was just curious, you know, we have shortages in psychiatry as well, and rural areas specifically. Is there any particular area that you look at to kind of maybe get students interested in that area?
Thank you, sir. And I have with me here the Director of JAMP, Paul Hermesmeyer. And Paul, could you speak to Dr. Fadias' question?
Yes, I will. The figure that we post about the 61% in primary care, we've been at that level for several years now, going into it. The way the students are recruited and brought into the undergrad program, we do not advocate or promote any specific area or of residency or practice, because so many of these students are not really knowledgeable about how the medical school to residency to specialization works. As they go through the program, through the summer internships, which are crucial for getting the students to understand, information is provided about almost all, if not all, of the different types of residencies. And so we feel really, really good that 60+% will choose primary care. As you say about psychiatry, that's not listed as one of the the fields in primary care, but we do have several. I know this is anecdotal information, but I'm going off, and I'd be happy to pull a report of how many students have moved through the program for any one of the top residency specializations. I hope I was able to answer your question. If not, please let me know what I failed to answer.
No, thank you. I think you did, and you're exactly right. I think that the joint program, the work that y'all are doing is excellent because it's providing kind of information and students in the process early. And one of the things I think that, and I'm not familiar with, you know, with the educational part as far as one of the big concerns is student debt, and you know, making sure that students understand not only what areas they're getting into possibly, and I understand it's hard to know when you're starting out at that young age, but also that they realize that yes, it's a great field, but there's also this debt issue that we have with the students coming out of medical school, $250,000, some $300,000 in debt, and so I think it's important for us to be able to relay all that information as well. Because at the coordinating board, as you know, we look at accessibility, which is great because of the program. Your program does a great job of doing that, but also affordability and those issues. And I know that's not exactly in your area, but that's more of the healthcare institutions. But I think it's important that we educate the students as they choose their careers and what they want to do to be able to look at the whole picture. But thank you, and great work, by the way. And that percentage, I think, is really good. And you're right, I understand it's held over the years. So thank you for the program and the whole work that y'all are doing.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Ms. Williams had to step away. Any other comments from any of the other board members for our guests? Okay. So, Dr. Silverman.
Thank you, Dr. Frias, and thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. So this agenda item is actually just the request to release the funds appropriated for the Joint Admissions Medical Program. That funding for the 2022-23 biennium is actually $9.6 million, and the staff request is for approval.
All righty, sorry I had to step away for a second. I am back. Do I have a motion to adopt the recommendation for relating to funding appropriation to the Joint Admissions Medical Program for fiscal years 22 and 23? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Chairman Frias. Do I have a second?
Second, Welcome Wilson.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5E is the report regarding to the activities of the Family Practice Residency Advisory Committee, including the report on trusted funds distributed in fiscal year 2021. Members, this is an informational item only. Dr. Michael Reagan, MD, Chair of the Family Practice Residency Advisory Committee, will provide a brief update of activities and be available to answer questions. Dr. Reagan?
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Glad to join you virtually. I hope you're hearing me and seeing me okay. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share the work of the Family Practice Advisory Committee. The program and committee were established by the 65th legislature in 1977. There are 12 members of the committee that are very passionate about fulfilling the legislative intent of the bill that created this program. The intent is to train family physicians to work in rural and underserved areas across Texas. The committee typically meets twice per year, once to review detailed financial and programmatic reports submitted by each program across the state, and then once to consider funding recommendations for the coming year to be presented to you. Of that funding, there are really three key elements. The first is to support the Faculty Development Center, which is currently located at UNTHSC. This is an essential program that helps support those programs across the state that don't have the resources to prepare and train their faculty so they can remain accredited programs. The second part of funding is rural and public health rotations. And this is really designed to expose residents to those underserved areas we are trying to get them to practice in. And that's been successful over the years. And then the third and the largest amount is for direct support for resident training across the state in the 34 programs that train family medicine physicians. I think one thing that always comes to mind is how effective is the program, and I would like to touch on that a little bit related to outcomes. Over the years, this funding has had very good outcomes, I believe. According to our data, over 9,000 physicians have trained during the program years, and greater than 80% of those stayed and practiced in Texas, with a large percentage of those training in underserved areas. The three components of funding have been critical in supporting this outcome. And kind of shifting gears to talk a little bit about funding, I think that's an important area to think about. The committee has been very anxious over the last several years as the per resident funding amount has declined. Currently, it hovers just above the $5,000 per resident mark. I think this year, the funding is $5,448 per resident. We will bring forth in the next agenda item a recommendation for a level of funding of $5,027 per resident. So there's another decline recommended this year, and that's been true over the last several years. The decline is really driven by two key factors. Certainly the second of those is probably having the larger effect. The first is that medical schools in Texas have expanded. More medical students graduating has driven the need for more GME slots. There has consequently been an increase in the number of residents trained. To give you an example, in 2017, there were 771 family medicine residents in training after certification. And this year, that number is expected to be 904. And that the committee believes that's good. The public good is served by that growth. I think that's a need. I think someone mentioned earlier that we're trying to make up for the shortfall of primary care doctors. This certainly does that. The second is a larger impact, and that's legislative cuts to this funding. I reviewed some notes from previous meetings and found that early on, this program supported about 20% of the cost of training a resident physician. Now that number is less than 5% of the cost. So I know I'm probably preaching to the choir on this issue, but I did want you to understand that funding is the number one concern for these programs across the state. We do a survey of financial and also programmatic features, and we ask the concerns that the program directors have in those programs. And overwhelmingly, the concern is finances. And we're worried that further erosion of that support could challenge these programs financially. We have seen a few programs close over the last several years. And so we're anxious about the funding levels. We'd like to see that grow if possible. That being said, I think those are the key points I wanted to make, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
So Dr. Reagan, I have a question. On those that have closed, is it financially mainly, as you mentioned?
It's hard to know for sure. When we do the surveys, often those programs are not available to give us details about that. We don't really have a process to figure that out. We do believe that it has an impact. There are lots of different reasons that these programs are challenged, but certainly financial is a big piece of the pie. Having been a program director in the past, I think those were the kinds of issues that kept me up at night, is the financial side of things. There are other issues, but I think it is an important one. And certainly, we heard loud and clear from the program directors across the state that everyone is worried about how to fund the resident education.
So do you feel family practice residencies are at the level where they can be, since we have a shortage? Is there a possible need to shift, because a lot of the students are going to school now are looking at specialty residencies, and the students are having some challenges, maybe meeting residencies, and not all the medical schools in our state are matching students 100%.
I'm not sure if I'm exactly following your logic, but I'll tell you that the programs within this legislative program fill completely. And so I believe that if we added additional slots, we would have additional resident serving. I don't know if that goes directly at your question or not.
It does. I think what I'm trying to get across is that there's a lot of students that I talk to, and presidents and deans of medical schools in our state, that a lot of the students are wanting to go to specialty care, not so much family practice. So in your opinion, do you feel that we need more family practice residencies?
Yes, sir. I believe we could fill them, definitely. I live in West Texas, and so lots of rural areas out here. And if you drive into any of those communities and look at the medical staff workforce, it is largely made up of family physicians. Specialists generally don't have enough patient volume to make it in a smaller place. And so it just naturally happens that if you're going to cover the rural areas, the underserved areas, it's going to be typically with primary care and especially family medicine. And so I believe it's been essential here in West Texas for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor, I have a question. You mentioned that 80% of the doctors who go through this program stay in Texas, and that a large percentage practice in rural areas. What is that large percentage? Do you know the number?
I don't have the percentage related to underserved areas. I will tell you that you saw figures about the JAMP program earlier, and the further you go along the pipeline, the closer you are to practice as a trainee. And so in residency, often most residents will stay within a 100-mile radius of where they do residency. And so that gives us a leg up on getting people to stay in Texas, because more people are going to stay close to where they train. For family medicine, if you desire to have a broad scope of your practice, the rural area is the place to be, because you can do obstetrics, you can do deliveries in your practice, you can do all kinds of additional procedures, and the scope of your practice is pretty broad. And that is very appealing to young graduates coming out of programs. And so there's just kind of a natural drive for them to go into those areas. I don't know if Dr. Silverman has statistics on the underserved piece. She might. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to me, going back to the point that I was making, Dr. Reagan and Ms. Schwartz, is that we know where the needs are, rural, that you described, and so I think to me it would make sense to do residencies for family practice in rural areas, because exactly what you said, 75 to 80% nearby in that range, within that 100-mile radius will stay in practice. So it would seem like we would emphasize our shortages and needs and have more residency programs in those areas to be able to fill those needs quicker. I mean, just thinking out loud.
Right. What would be also valuable is trying to understand when those residents who train in those areas don't stay. I know in some areas we're not retaining, for example, in far west Texas, enough of our residents. So why are they leaving? And I think that would be an important piece of information to understand. So.
I agree. I think the longevity of practice is an important question. Once you get somebody placed, it sure is great to have them complete their career in that location. And I've thought about that a lot. Some of it is the support that they get in terms of other practitioners working with them. And some communities seem to do better with that than others. And I'm not really sure I have a good answer for that.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Reagan. Any other comments or questions from the board members? Ms. Williams had to step away, so Dr. Silverman?
So that was an informational item only, and next Dr. Reagan is going to request the distribution, the recommendation related to the distribution of trustee funds for fiscal year 22.
Okay, that'll be agenda item 5F, and that is consideration of adopting the recommendation relating to the distribution of funds trusted to the coordinating board to support family practice residency programs for fiscal year 2022. Dr. Michael Reagan and Dr. Stacy Silverman, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item and be available to questions. Dr. Silverman.
So yes, this is just the request to release the $4.75 million in fiscal year 2022 funding.
Okay. Any, Dr. Reagan, would you like to say a few words on that?
I think the balance of the funds go to the training of residents, which is the most essential item here, but the other two are very important in terms of achieving the intent. And so those are the various funding amounts that you see before you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments, board members, or either Dr. Silverman or Dr. Reagan? If not, do I have a motion to adopt the recommendation relating to the distribution of funds trusted to the coordinating board to support the family practice residency programs of fiscal year 2022?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Schwartz and Mr. Torn. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? If not, motion passes. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 5G, which is the report regarding the activities of the Lower Division Academic Course Guide Manual Advisory Committee. Members, this is an information item only. We have Dr. Paul Bernazzi and Dr. Michael Indy who will provide a brief update on activities and be available to answer questions. They are online, correct?
Good morning. This is Michael Endy at Weatherford College. Dr. Paul Bernazzi can't be with us this morning, but I'll present the report on his behalf.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Endy.
Thank you. The Lower Division Academic Course Guide Manual is the official list of the lower courses approved for general academic transfer that may be offered by public and community and technical colleges in Texas. The Acgm Advisory Committee provides the board with advice and recommendations to add, delete, and revise courses to facilitate inclusion of new disciplines of study, to reflect developments within existing disciplines, and provide vertical and horizontal alignment of courses within disciplines, and to respond to obsolescence of disciplines of study or courses. The Acgm Advisory Committee met once during fiscal year 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At that fall meeting, the committee heard updates on the operations of the Texas Common Course Numbering System website, discussed courses without learning outcomes, and reviewed course enrollments to identify underutilized courses. The consensus of the committee at that time was that student learning outcomes development must continue with the goal to develop learning outcomes for all courses in the Acgm, while simultaneously reviewing existing learning outcomes of courses developed earlier. The review of course enrollments resulted in courses with low or no enrollments being scheduled for deletion with a 2-year appeal and teach-out period. I'm available to answer any questions you might have at this time about the activities of the Acgm committee.
Thank you, Mr. Endy. Any questions, board members, for Mr. Endy? This is for information purposes only. If not, thank you, Mr. Endy. Thank you, Dr. Silverman. Ms. Williams?
Okay. Agenda item 5H is the consideration of adopting the recommendation relating to changes in the Lower Division Academic Course Guide Manual. Dr. Barazani and Mr. Michael Indy, co-chairs for the Academic Course Guide Manual Advisory Committee, will present this item and be available to answer questions. And I understand Mr. Indy is going to present.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Acgm is developed with the input of the Acgm Advisory Committee, which is charged to provide recommendations to the board to add and delete those courses and the inclusion of new disciplines of study, reflect developments within existing disciplines, and provide vertical and horizontal alignment. The committee completes a comprehensive review of course enrollments annually. The committee uses thresholds in the coordinating board rules for course inclusion and deletion from the ACGM to identify those courses that are not often offered, have low statewide enrollments at the community college level, or have limited applicability to degree requirements at the baccalaureate level. For a course to be included in the ACGM, 5 universities must accept and apply that course to a bachelor degree program. A lower division course offered at 3 or fewer community colleges is required to be reviewed for deletion from the ACGM. The advisory committee also schedules courses for deletion if the discipline-specific faculty work groups of the Learning Outcomes Project recommend courses for review period and possible deletion. Courses scheduled for deletion are noted in the ACGM and have a 2-year period for teach-out, during which institutions may appeal those deletions. Successful appeals must substantiate the need and viability of underutilized courses. I believe the committee has a list of courses currently recommended for deletion. The courses in their teach-out periods have concluded, and the courses are recommended for removal from the ACGM. Those courses will continue to be eligible for funding through the end of the 2021 academic year, with eligibility ending August 31st, 2021. Would entertain any questions you might have at this time. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Indy? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt the recommendation relating to the changes in the lower division academic course guide manual? So moved. I have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5I is the report regarding the activities of the medical education and graduate medical education programs. Members, this is an informational item only. Dr. Stacy Silverman, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Dr. Silverman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. The Coordinating Board administers grant programs that support efforts to increase the first-year residency positions through the Graduate Medical Education Expansion Program and to promote medical students' interests in primary care medical specialties through the Statewide Preceptorship Program. Graduate Medical Education, or GME, is also referred to as residency training, and it's the final stage of formal education and training that a physician must complete before receiving a Texas medical license, entering independent practice, and obtaining board certification in a medical specialty area. Residency training usually takes between 3 and 8 to 8 years, and it's a commitment. Typically, these are housed in hospital settings. The funding for the GME expansion program started in 2013 with an appropriation of $14 million to support several efforts to increase the number of first-year residency programs. So the GME expansion program helps the state achieve its goal of having 10% more first-year residency positions than Texas medical school graduates. The program helps to ensure that Texas medical school graduates have a place to finish their residency training and stay in Texas to provide care. I'm pleased to report that the state met its 1.1 to 1 ratio goal in fiscal year 2020, and over the current 2021 biennium provided support for about 2,000 resident positions. And that concludes my report on GME, and I'll briefly touch on the Statewide Preceptorship Program, which was funded in 2015, 2017, and 2019. The legislature appropriated $3 million to reestablish this program, which had not been funded since 2011. The programs are in family medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics, and they provide medical students with an opportunity to shadow primary care physicians and gain an understanding of the day-to-day activities encountered in their practices. So that concludes my informational report, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, agenda item 5J was approved on consent. Agenda item 5K is the report regarding the activities of the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. Members, this is an informational item only. Dr. Justin Louder, Chair of Learning Technology Advisory Committee, will provide a brief update on activities and be available to answer questions. Dr. Louder.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Justin Louder, and I am currently the Chair of the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. I'm also the Associate Vice Provost of e-learning at Texas Tech University. LTAC engages in substantive policy research and discussion regarding the role of learning technology and how they play within Texas higher education. Our committee also reviews institutional proposals for distance-delivered doctoral programs, and we inform the coordinating board and the commissioner and coordinating board staff on how distance education and digital learning, including e-learning tools such as electronic textbooks, open course materials, can help achieve the goals of 60 by 30 techs and ultimately education in general in Texas. The report you have in front of you covers the last 2 years of activities, and it is because of the pandemic. We were unable to do the report last year, so it was combined into 2 this year. I will say that our committee was one of the first coordinating board advisory committees that went to electronic meetings, and we started meeting in May of 2020 via Zoom and web conference. With support from the coordinating board and member institutions. We met a number of times throughout 2020 to discuss a number of issues dealing with distance and digital learning in Texas. We approved a number of new distance delivered doctoral programs, and you can see those in the list provided. And then we have spent a great deal of time talking about distance education and learning technology in Texas. Of course, we all know over the last 18 months, digital learning, online learning has become paramount and important for our students and our communities. And one role that LTAC has taken is working with member institutions to find out how the pandemic shift impacted their programs and how they were dealing with the issues that come about with now students being at a distance. So the committee has been very active with that work. We are currently working with coordinating board staff to update the definitions dealing with distance learning and online learning in Texas. Those definitions haven't been looked at in approximately 10 years or so, and so it is time to update these. I would also like to say to Commissioner Keller, thank you to him for now establishing the digital learning division within the coordinating board, and also bringing on Dr. Michelle Singh as Associate Commissioner of Digital Learning. We in the committee feel that this was a great addition to the THECB and shows the importance that online and digital learning plays within education in Texas. I am happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, I think that was for, let me see, Dr. Chair. That was for an informational item only. Okay. Agenda item 5L1. Is consideration of approving the request from Texas A&M University for a Doctorate of Philosophy degree with a major in construction science. Dr. Patrick Sewerman, Department Head and Associate Professor, Dr. David Jong, Professor and PhD Program Coordinator, and Dr. Phil Lewis, Associate Professor and Master Program Coordinator, are available for questions and comments. Dr. Stacy Silverman, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present the item and be available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Texas A&M University is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy, a PhD in Construction Science, and it would be the first such program to be offered in Texas. The proposed face-to-face program would prepare students to teach and conduct research in construction and related disciplines. Graduates would also be well-positioned to enter upper management of private sector firms and government agencies in construction and construction-related positions in Texas and nationally. The proposed program would consist of a minimum of 60 semester credit hours for students entering with a master's degree and 90 semester credit hours for students entering with a bachelor's degree. The Texas Workforce Commission anticipates an 18% growth in construction science positions for the decade 2016 through 26. This is not the case nationally, as the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics projects a lower 9% increase in such positions. Construction science is a dynamic profession that prepares students for extensive research and careers in academia, industry, and government, while providing a broad knowledge of construction-related disciplines. The institution estimates that the 5-year cost would total just over $5.3 million, and enrollment would begin with a fall 2021 cohort of approximately 9 students. Texas A&M University has the faculty in place to support the program and will submit progress reports in years 1, 3, and 5, documenting the program's implementation. The staff recommendation is for approval, and we do have institutional representatives available to address any questions.
So I have a question. So the program is starting in the fall of 2021, like in 2 months?
That is the anticipated start date. They want to hit the ground running, and they're just waiting for the approval.
Okay, and so they have students already interested, obviously?
I think they do.
Students and staff.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious on the timeline to see if they're going to be able to meet their projections.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have representatives online?
We do.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Silverman. This is Dr. Sewerman. Every time they say Dr. Silverman, I think they're calling on me, but this is Dr. Pat Sewerman. I'm the department head, and I'm proud to have Dr. David Jong, who's going to be our PhD coordinator. He and Dr. Phil Lewis worked on the application, and we currently actually have 28 PhD students who are in different programs, but all sponsored by grants that our very successful faculty have secured. And so they're currently in architecture PhD, or in a civil engineering PhD, or a multidisciplinary PhD. And so we are definitely ready to hit the ground running. And we were very excited to have 30 letters of support from engineering here at Texas A&M, architecture, and then lots of industry sponsors, either in construction, technology, facility management. And so we're very excited to be the first construction-focused PhD for the state of Texas, and we're ready.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, when I first saw this program come before us, I was impressed. I was surprised that we didn't have one in the state, actually. So I think that this is an outstanding program to start up.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks very much.
Back to the earlier question of, so have your year 1 9 students, have those been identified?
Yes, I don't know their names specifically, but what we did was we asked, especially a lot of the architecture PhD students, if they would want to transfer into a construction PhD, and it was nearly unanimous of those students, especially if they were already a construction background or engineering background, and so that's the 9 students who would switch in immediately.
So I'm looking at the pro forma here. Is the plan to have it, kind of paying for itself after year 5? Is that, can I see where there's an allocation of reallocation of other existing resources? What is on the mathematical, the business side of this? How does it work out once you get up and rolling? Is it covering itself?
I think it
5 years.
Yes, sir. We were very conservative in that estimate, but in essence, we're actually securing grant funds we're the #1 federal grant recipient for construction research in the country. And then we're leveraging those funds to pay off other people's PhD programs. And so we're operating at a loss right now because the money goes out to other programs, but we would be able to keep the money here more if we would use those grant funds to then also pay for the PhD students who would be in our own PhD program. So we're operating successfully now, even though it's at a loss. But so I'm very positive that we would be self-sustaining and likely immediately.
And so the federal funds, which you say are in hand, that's federal grant funds that you apply, that the school applied for and has in hand. So you don't, does the break-even analysis assume you're going to continue to get similar federal grant funds after 5 years, or?
Even with the just the existing overhead of the department to teach our undergraduate and master's courses, this really won't represent any added cost because we can administer the PhD program with the professors we already have. We have about 36 different professors total who teach 1,176 students. And so we, with the size and the budget of our existing program, our hope is to be able to pay for all the students with grants, and we're very confident that we can. But even if we didn't have those grants, we would still be able to do it. So we're very excited to have the PhD program.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that by adding more programs, we're not taking resources away from other programs that we previously approved.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the request from Texas A&M University for the Doctorate of Philosophy degree with a major in construction science?
So moved, Sam Torn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion passes. Agenda item 5L2 is the consideration of approving the request from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, for a Bachelor's of Science degree with a major in computer engineering. Dr. Scott C. Smith, Chair of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, and Dr. Robert Deersing, Interim Dean Professor Emeritus of Computer Science, and Dr. Afzal Nouri, Associate Dean for Undergrad Affairs, are available for questions and comments. Dr. Stacy Silverman will present this item and be available for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Texas A&M University Kingsville is proposing a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering. The proposed face-to-face program would be offered at the institution's main campus in Kingsville and offer students an additional option for pursuing an engineering degree. Texas A&M University Kingsville identified a regional need for computer engineers, and no existing programs are within an hour's drive. There are 11 public institutions that offer a bachelor's level computer engineering program in Texas. The proposed program is designed to prepare students in computer hardware, software, and embedded systems, which is a combination of computer hardware and software that involves developing a computer system by combining existing computer chips and then programming the developed system to function as desired. Think of smartphones or the internet. The Texas Workforce Commission indicates a need for the program, and the institution has the resources necessary to implement the proposed program, again, beginning in fall 2021. The institution can implement the proposed program with the existing faculty and anticipates no new costs to begin the program. The staff recommendation is approval, and we do have institutional representatives available to address any questions.
Would any of the institutional representatives like to make comments?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to all the board members and committee members. I have my colleagues here, as you mentioned, Dr. Nouri and Dr. Smith, the department chair, who worked on the proposal. But I'd just like to say from my own career experience, I think there's a great need for the degree. It does provide a mixture of skills from computer science and electrical engineering. And in my experience, that's typically used in specialized applications, which we tend not to think about as much, and also probably new product development. So I think there's going to be quite a few students be interested in that degree. And as you know, we've had electrical engineering and computer science here for many years. So it's just a matter of putting together the right mixture of courses. Dr. Smith, you'd like to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to give a very brief overview. So I'm Scott Smith, I'm the chair of electrical engineering and computer science here at Duke. I've been here for the past 2 years, and I'd like to note that my undergraduate degree is.
Dr. Smith, we have a really bad connection. You're breaking up a little bit.
Let me rejoin.
Dr. Nouri, why don't you go ahead and comment there while Dr. Smith is fixing this problem?
Certainly. I think we are quite excited about the computer engineering program, and that is basically driven by a lot of industries that exist in Texas, but a lot of new industries who've come in Texas, Austin, and close by regions where they're looking for graduates who are well versed in both hardware as well as software. And we have outstanding faculty members, and our intention is to start the program in fall. And even though we are starting this in fall, the first year is just going to be a common year. So we are going to have a year's time to really be looking at recruiting new students. And there are current students in computer science and electrical engineering who are looking for these opportunities in this specific area of computer engineering. And we have laid the groundwork of having this program accredited once the students graduate, because all our programs, the electrical engineering program and the computer engineering program are both accredited. And so this is going to help us in many ways because of these two programs that we currently have.
Dr. Smith, go ahead.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, that's much better. Thank
All
you.
right, sorry about that. So as I was saying, so I'm Scott Smith. I'm the department chair of electrical engineering and computer science here at Duke. I've been here about 2 years now, and both my bachelor's degree and my PhD degree are actually in computer engineering. So as was previously mentioned, so computer engineering is a combination of electrical engineering and computer science. The computer hardware portion is taught in the electrical engineering degree. The computer software portion is taught as part of computer science. So we currently teach all the classes that we need for the proposed computer engineering degree already between our existing electrical engineering and computer science degrees. So adding this new degree won't require any additional resources. Many students and industry as well are very interested in the computer engineering degree. A number of our students already work towards this area, but in order to do so, they have to double major in both electrical engineering and computer science, which requires 3 extra semesters. So it takes them about 5.5 years instead of only 4 years with the proposed computer engineering degree. So this new proposed degree will be an excellent opportunity for students. It'll be very beneficial for students and industry in the region. And again, it won't cost anything because we already teach all the classes and we have capacity in those classes for the additional computer engineering students. Thank you.
Awesome. It sounds awesome. You already have the recipe. You're just making a different type of cake. Are there any questions for Dr. Silverman or any of the institutional representatives?
I have a question, Madam Chair. For Dr. Smith, are you still on? My question is for
Yes.
Dr. Smith, if he's still on. So it references a couple of times to the region. So I'm from South Texas. So I just wanted to find out specifically, like the students in placement. I'm looking at outcomes in terms of thinking about the jobs for the students, and you mentioned the industry and the needs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so with our current electrical engineering, degree, the students, can specialize in computer hardware. So working on different computer hardware systems for local companies, as well as Southwest Research Institute hires a number of our students in the computer hardware area. Other Texas companies like Texas Instruments, for example, hires students with that computer hardware expertise. With computer engineering, you can focus in 3 areas. The computer hardware area, you can focus on computer software, which is more similar to what computer scientists study. However, the computer engineers also have the knowledge of the computer hardware, which is not taught in most computer science programs. So that gives them a leg up on the computer science students if they're working with software, because they also know the hardware aspects. So they'd be able to do a lot of the same jobs the computer science students do. However, they wouldn't have to be on the job training to learn the hardware side of things, because they would learn that as part of their degree. So that's a big benefit to why industry is very interested in this. Currently, industry hires our electrical engineering students, our computer science students, but then they have to do a lot of on-the-job training for the electrical engineers to teach them more of the software side, for the computer science students to teach them more of the hardware side, because those 2 degrees do not teach that other side of the discipline. Whereas the computer engineering degree teaches both the hardware side and the software side, so the students get both aspects of computers without having to take an additional 1.5 years to get a double major.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quickly, you mentioned before that you'd be starting this fall, and that since this year would be used more to start bringing students into the program by looking through the 2 other departments, 2 other majors that already are there. What do you guys already have it set up with your advising faculty to start pushing this degree, or is there another way that you're going to try and bring students into it? Because it'd be good if we could get an idea of that.
Sure. So yeah,
over the next couple of years.
Yeah, so with our current students, a number of them have indicated they're very interested in computer engineering, and I've been telling them, okay, we have this new degree in the works, so as soon as this is approved, you'll be able to switch to the new degree, and you'll be able to get that expertise without having to take an extra 1.5 years. So right away, we'll have some of the students that are currently electrical engineering, computer science students switch into computer engineering. As Dr. Nori mentioned, for new incoming students, many of them are also interested in computer engineering. For that freshman year, all the classes are pretty much the same for electrical engineering, computer engineering, and computer science. So the new incoming students will have that first year to learn more about all 3 of those degrees, and then decide which one they want to continue on in going into sophomore year. As far as recruiting new students, we have a recruiter for the college that goes out and talks with lots of regional high schools and middle schools for recruiting. Faculty also engage in recruiting locally and regionally, and we've had a lot of interest from students in computer engineering. So we'll be talking about computer engineering as soon as this degree gets approved, like we talk about all the other programs in the college, And from what we've seen so far, we have a very high level of interest from prospective students. So that will fall right into our existing recruiting efforts. And I don't see any problems with recruiting students into the program.
Thank you.
Are there any internship possibilities available for the students that are going through it?
Yes, so in our college, we have a lot of internship opportunities available currently. So we have a big engineering career fair in both the fall and the spring semester, where we have lots of companies from all over the region and even further that come to hire our students, that have hired our students in the past. Students have done an excellent job, so they keep coming back year after year to hire more and more of our students. So computer engineering students would have that same opportunity as our electrical engineering and our computer science students do. And as I mentioned, those companies that are really need expertise in both hardware and software, they're currently hiring either our electrical engineering or computer science students, and then they're having to do on-the-job training to train them on either the software side for electrical engineers or the hardware side for the computer science students. Whereas with the new computer engineering degree, they won't have to do near as much on-the-job training because the students will have both the hardware and the software expertise from the computer engineering degree. So the companies that come and recruit are very excited about this degree, and our students will have lots of opportunities for internships, co-ops, as well as full-time employment from these employers.
And even further, what about partnerships with some of those industries? Have them, partner with the university and, part of the learning is the students will already be employed or have a internship with that company, but they set up a partnership with the university to bring the students straight from the university into their company. Have we thought about doing something like that?
Yeah, so we don't currently have any formal partnerships set up. But as I mentioned, we have lots of companies that we work very closely with that in fact is a non-formal partnership, as they come and they recruit our students for internships, co-ops, and then as long as the student does a good job on the internship or co-op, most likely they get hired on full-time at that company. So we do a lot of that already, just informally, nothing that's formal. And maybe Dr. Deersing or Dr. Norrie could comment on that. I don't believe we have any formal partnership arrangements for any of the programs in the college, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. But part of the answer to the question is part of our college staff, we do have an internship coordinator that's part of what we call our Javelina Engineering Student Success Center. So we do have a internship coordinator as part of our staff.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the request from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, for a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in computer engineering? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Director Wilson. May I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Agenda item 5L3 is consideration of approving the request from the University of Texas at El Paso for a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in Aerospace and Aeronautical Engineering. Members, you have supplemental material for this item. Dr. John Wiebe, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, and Dr. Tracy Nava, Interim Dean of College of Engineering, and Dr. Jack Chessa, Chair of Mechanical Engineering, are available for questions and comments. Dr. Stacy Silverman will present this item and be available to answer questions. Dr. Silverman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, you received supplemental materials because in the original blue page, we had incorrectly placed the housing of this proposed program in the Department of Aeronautical and Aeronautical Engineering. It is going to instead be housed in the Department of Mechanical Engineering in the College of Engineering. So the University of Texas El Paso is proposing a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace and Aeronautical Engineering. The proposed face-to-face program would prepare students for careers in aerospace and defense industries. UT El Paso identified a need for aerospace and aeronautical engineers in the region, and there are 3 public institutions that offer a bachelor's level degree in aerospace and aeronautical engineering in Texas. The proposed program would be designed to prepare students for careers in aerospace, aeronautical, and defense systems engineering and related disciplines. The focus of the program would be on defense, small satellite, propulsion systems, exploration vehicles, autonomous systems, and hypersonics. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, UT El Paso will hire 5 core faculty members. 1 new core faculty member would be hired each year of the first 5 years of the program, and the institution estimates that the 5-year cost would total just under $10 million, and the staff recommendation is for approval, and we do have institutional representatives here to address any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Silverman. Dr. Wiebe? Dr. Chessa would like to say a few words.
Yeah, Dr. Wiebe was not able to attend, unfortunately, so I apologize for that, but I can give a brief remuneration on that. So thanks for the introduction and the opportunity to make this proposal. So as was mentioned, this is a program that's going to be housed in mechanical engineering. The mechanical engineering program itself has always had a very strong emphasis on aerospace engineering. Coincidentally, just yesterday at the historic Blue Origin launch, over 3/4 of the engineers that supported that launch and have developed those systems were UTEP Mechanical Engineering alum. And so this proposed program will seek to strengthen that, as well as allow us to give more focused education to those individuals who are very much dedicated into those careers. So we project that there'll be about 400 student enrollment. Currently, there's about 1,200 undergraduate students in the mechanical engineering department. And, you know, we feel that the university has been very generous in their support for this proposed program, both from a resource standpoint, as well as in general from the administration. So we suspect that, in fact, due to the growing areas in the aerospace industry, looking at near space ecosystem development, in situ resource utilization, dealing with autonomy and satellite systems, there's a lot of newer areas that we're going to focus on that will differentiate us from some of the very classic aerospace programs, and also make the students highly marketable. And as is well known, UTEP is a majority Hispanic school, and so we suspect that actually we will probably become one of the larger producers of Hispanic aerospace engineers in the nation very soon. And I think that's it. So if there's any questions, or if Dr. Nava would like to make any clarifications.
No clarifications. I'd just like to express the support that the administration is giving to this request, and to indicate that it has a lot of traction here. There's a lot of students that are ready and willing to go into this, and there is industry demand already being voiced by our partners in industry. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I watched the launch yesterday feeling like I was a child. It was so exciting. but then also filled with pride having heard about UTEP's great involvement in the project. And so I think that this degree is a really exciting advancement for El Paso, and I'm excited for our partners at UTEP. So congratulations, this is great.
Thank you.
It's great to have aerospace back in vogue.
It is.
Quiet for a few years, so it's great to have it back. Where are the other 3 institutions in the state? Where are those? Which ones are those?
I believe they are UT Austin and
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M and UT Arlington. Okay, thank you.
That's great.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at El Paso for a Bachelor's of Science degree, a BS, with a Master in Aerospace and Aeronautical Engineering?
I will happily move.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5L4 is consideration of approving the request from the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley for a Doctorate of Philosophy degree with a major in physics. Dr. Guy Bailey, President, and Dr. Jana Arney, Deputy President and Interim Provost, and Dr. Vivian Insera, Dean, College of Science, are available for questions and comments. Dr. Stacy Siffelman will present the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The University of Texas Rio Grande Valley is proposing a Doctor of Philosophy degree in physics. The proposed program would begin in spring 2022 with students to complete 60 semester credit hours beyond a master's degree and 72 semester credit hours beyond a bachelor's degree. The proposed program would be offered face-to-face to students in Brownsville and in Edinburgh. The curriculum plan estimates 4 to 5 years to complete the degree. Graduates would be well-positioned to enter careers in the emerging high-tech industries located in the lower Rio Grande Valley, and the job prospects are strong for physics PhDs both in Texas and nationwide in both industry and academia. The proposed program would offer specialty areas not emphasized in other Texas programs. Specifically, the faculty have expertise in fields of gravitational wave astronomy and radio astronomy and radio frontier computational algorithmic studies. There are currently 14 PhD programs in physics in Texas, but the nearest one is 300 miles away at the University of Texas, San Antonio. As the first proposed program in the lower Rio Grande Valley, the program may, in fact, help address our need for more Hispanic PhD graduates. And no additional faculty are necessary, and the institution estimates that the 5-year cost would be just under $5 million. And we do have institutional representatives here to address any questions.
Okay. Dr. Guy?
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I just want to thank the coordinating board for your consideration of this request. We have a strong history of physics at UT Brownsville, one of our legacy institutions, and also at UTPA. So we have a robust master's program we've always had, and we've done very well there. This is well-funded. We have a lot of external funding. The timing for seeking a PhD in this area is very good right now with the location of SpaceX here and the relocation of a number of allied companies that serve that. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for our graduates as we move forward. The timing is good. We have the resources to do it. And we think it's a great opportunity for us and for our students. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Dr. Arnie or Dr. Insera, would you guys like to make comments? Okay, I don't believe they are on, so on that note, are there any questions?
I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay, thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
I think it is 11:53. I think we can get through possibly one more agenda item, and then we'll break for lunch at noon, okay? So agenda item 5L5 is consideration of approving the request from Angelo State University for a Doctorate of Psychology degree with a major in counseling psychology. Dr. Don R. Toplift, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, and Dr. Leslie Myron, Dean, Archer College of Health and Human Services, and Dr. Drew A. Curtis, Director of Counseling Psychology, are available for questions and comments. Dr. Stacy Silverman will present the items, and the institutional representatives can speak if we'd like to hear them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Angelo State University is proposing a Doctor of Psychology, a PsyD degree in counseling psychology to be delivered primarily face-to-face. The proposed program would be the institution's second doctoral level degree and would begin in fall 2022 and require 105 semester credit hours for students entering with a bachelor's degree and 81 semester credit hours for students entering with a master's degree. The proposed PsyD in counseling psychology would prepare students for the licensed psychologist exam, and it's a continuing need for mental health providers in Texas. Currently, there are 18 master's and 5 doctoral counseling psychology programs in Texas, and in accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, Angelo State will hire 1 additional core faculty member to start in the program's first year. The institution estimates that 5-year costs would total just under $2.5 million. And we do have institutional representatives available to address any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Would the institutional reps like to give comment?
Hello, I'm Drew Curtis. Thank you, Dr. Silverman. Thank you, Madam Chair and the council. Certainly with me here is our provost, Dr. Topliff, and we're excited and honored to be here and for you all to consider our proposal. I think it directly speaks to the need many of us have seen, certainly within this pandemic, the need for mental health. Certainly, as Dr. Farias, you mentioned earlier, the need for mental health and psychiatry within rural settings like West Texas, around San Angelo and surrounding areas. Certainly a need. There's the Bureau of Labor and Statistics indicates a growth of psychologists. This seems to directly hit on the mission 60 by 30 TX, responding to that, and certainly the national, state, and local levels. And as discussed earlier with medical professionals, the propensity for them to practice in the surrounding area, that's one of the hopes with this program, is that we'll not only train individuals to become licensed psychologists and fulfill those needs nationally at the state level and local levels, but hopefully, that while they are in their training, we're going to see them providing services to San Angelo and the surrounding areas. So that the HOG Foundation has expressed that certainly is a mental need, the mental health needs in rural settings like San Angelo. So we certainly see the need, we see the call, and we think that this proposal directly speaks to that need. Our existing counseling psychology program that I direct, we do largely, we already have the structure and facilities to achieve master's level practitioners, so it's not too much more of what we're already doing. So once again, we're excited to hopefully fulfill this need, and we're honored that you're considering our proposal, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have one question. Dr. Silverman mentioned face-to-face. Does that preclude any of the classes from being virtual if we stipulate face-to-face in the beginning?
Absolutely not, but it's just primarily face-to-face.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No, I'd just like to make a comment that thank you for this proposal. I think it's very pertinent, obviously, as I stated earlier, about the mental health issues that we're having, not only in our state, but all over the country with all that higher education has gone through and everyone's gone through. So I think this is a very timely proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the request from Angelo State University for a Doctor of Psychiatry, Doctor of Psychiatry degree with a major in counseling psychiatry? Do I have a motion? Psychology. Sorry, psychology.
So moved.
Thank you, Sam. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, it is 11:58. I think we can break for lunch right now, and we will convene back in 30 minutes, so at 12:30.
Oh, okay. Good. Glad things are going well. That's great.
I'm thinking about waiting on me? Okay, members, now it is 12:32. We have a quorum. Take a quick look around. We will reconvene and take up the next agenda items. Agenda item 5N, agenda item 501 and 502 were approved on consent. Agenda item 503 is consideration of adopting the request to extend the current contract for the Texas Success Initiative pre-assessment activity. Jarrell Booker, Assistant Commissioner for College Readiness and Success, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Mr. Booker?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members. I'm Jarrell Booker, Assistant Commissioner for College Readiness and Success. As many of you know, we use TSI to determine college readiness, to determine preparedness for the first level college course. By law, TSI, we're required to give a pre-assessment so students don't walk in cold turkey and have to take the exam when they're actually at the college. So this pre-assessment activity is done by another organization called Quirium. So we've actually had a contract with Quirium over the last several years, and they've done an excellent job serving about 15,000 students a month for this pre-assessment. We now have to rebid that contract and get a new contractor, but we don't have enough time to do that in the time that the contract's going to end later on this month. So we're here to request an extension of the current contract of at least about 6 months so we can actually put out a bid and actually get either the same contractor or an additional contractor and have a competitive bid for that. So we're requesting an extension, and that's what this item is for.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve an extension to the contract, to the current contract for the Texas Success Initiative pre-assessment activity? Do I have a motion?
So moved. Oh, I'm not on this committee, sorry. I am on this committee, we're not.
Yeah, I think you're on all the committees.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm confused with the next meeting, sorry.
I have a motion. May I have a second? I have
Second.
a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 504 is consideration for adopting the request to establish an interagency contract, IAC, with the University of Texas at Austin for continued research and data services for Texas OnCourse. Jarrell Booker will present this item, as well as Laura Brenham, Deputy Assistant Commissioner for College and Career Advising.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, again, Jarrell Booker for the record. I'm presenting on agenda item 504 relating to an interagency agreement. As many of you know and heard earlier from Commissioner Keller, the OnCourse initiative has moved from the University of Texas at Austin here to the coordinating board over the past year. Laura Brennan is our new Deputy Assistant Commissioner for College and Career Advising, and she leads the OnCourse team here at the agency, as well as several other employees and staff and agency initiatives. So I welcome Laura, and this gives me an opportunity to turn over to her to do her first board presentation. Laura?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Laura Brennan, and I'm the Deputy Assistant Commissioner for College and Career Advising. So, as Jarrell mentioned, through House Bill 2827 in the 87th Texas Legislature, the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board assumed the operations of Texas OnCourse, which previously resided at UT Austin. Texas OnCourse is a college and career readiness initiative that aims to equip all Texas students for an educational and professional future that unlocks their potential. Over 18,000 counselors and advisors across the state utilize Texas OnCourse digital learning in subjects like financial aid, post-secondary pathways, and career pathways. Texas OnCourse also provides college and career digital learning opportunities for middle school students and their families. Texas OnCourse has relied on the critical research and data services at UT Austin since program inception. The Research and Data Science team in the Office of Strategy and Policy at UT Austin provides consulting and services on research agenda development and execution, research design and analysis, data collection, research and data infrastructure, and data reporting. Additionally, the research and data science team at UT Austin manages data sharing agreements that Texas OnCourse holds with over 20 districts across the state. These districts are a part of a program called the Texas OnCourse District Fellowship, where they receive advanced training on college and career readiness, all with the aim to improve the college and career outcomes for the students in their schools. Continued receipt of data on these districts is critical for this programming and evaluating the Texas OnCourse work as a whole. Through the proposed contract, the research and data team will manage the work of a third-party evaluation of Texas OnCourse's impact on student outcomes. The evaluation is essential to understanding how our Texas OnCourse resources and programming contribute to the goals of 60 by 30 text. The projected cost of the research and data services during each fiscal year of the agreement is $200,000 for a total of $400,000, and the pass-through cost of the third-party evaluation is $190,200. For program and research agenda continuity, the staff requests approval to enter an interagency contract with UT Austin for continued research and data services for Texas OnCourse for a total of $590,200. The contract would initiate September 1st, 2021 and expire on August 31st, 2023. So that concludes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Any questions? I have one on the, when the contract expire, are there any option years to keep it going, or would we have to go out and rebid it, or?
So I think that's something we would reevaluate when it comes closer to the end of the agreement. The term proposed here is very important for our third-party evaluator timeline, and then also working with the fellow districts, because as I mentioned, we have these data sharing agreements that we do not want to lose.
Okay. All righty, any other questions? Okay, hearing none.
Is it all right if I?
Go ahead.
Just because I'm new and I wasn't here when the program was first started,
Sure.
Is there a reason why particularly UT Austin is the program used? Are there any other available that might be better, or what's kind of the reasoning for that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So UT Austin originally received the charge for Texas OnCourse. So the whole Texas OnCourse team was housed at UT Austin and working very closely with the research and data team there. So we were pretty closely embedded with our operations. And so this is really, to continue this work with UT Austin is for program continuity and to make sure that we're able to continue delivering on the fellowship program and then the evaluation of our programmatic efforts.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the request to establish an interagency contract with the University of Texas at Austin for continued research and data services for Texas OnCourse? I'll move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 505 is consideration and possible action to enter into an agreement with the Texas A&M University, the University of Texas at Austin, Texas Christian University, and the Trinity University to allocate funding to continue the Advised Texas College Advising Program. Jarrell Booker, Assistant Commissioner for College and Readiness and Success, will present this item and be available for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is probably my sixth time bringing Advise Texas to this board. Thankfully, the 87th legislature felt the need to provide funds for this again in our college and career readiness advising track for our budget. Just to remind you, the funds that we receive for Advise Texas is also pretty much matched from our partners. They actually, it's maybe either 60-40 or 40 for the state and 60s, mostly the institutions or the school districts actually providing additional funds for this. We serve up to 120 high schools, high-need high schools, and then the partners are the institutions that are there in your board agenda item. And we're just looking for approval to continue to fund Advise Texas with these newly appropriated funds and still work with these partners moving forward. One of your consent items actually expands Advise Texas. So this is actually the base and the foundation, and the other one that's in consent will expand it. So we look for approval of these funds with these partners.
Okay. All right, any questions?
So the 120 high schools, do we solicit them? They solicit us for help, or
Yeah.
how did you identify?
We originally just pulled the a large list of students of high schools that have low college going rates. So we started with that, and then you work backwards with districts that have the capacity to work with these partners. Where are they geographically? Can we find near peer advisors to go there? So that's where those 120 come from. That sort of starter list of low college going rate.
And the 60% is funded by the school systems?
It's a mix. It's a mix of our partners, the College Advising Corps, which is a national nonprofit, which originally started Advise Texas and other states. It's also a mix of the institutions raising funds, as well as the high schools actually pitching in funds also to make that work for them.
So are we putting staff in the high schools, or we're advising the advisors?
We fund the institutions, and then they go hire near peer advisors to work in those 120 high schools.
And then do they have some sort of reporting obligation to us after the fact?
Absolutely.
As to their results and how and where we can measure progress in each area?
Absolutely. These funds actually go to the support of evaluation every year. And it's constant, monthly. They give us reports on how they're doing. We're actually able to pull that information ourselves. So we monitor, help with professional development, and definitely do the research and evaluation after the fact.
Anyone else? Okay. Do I have a motion to enter into agreements with Texas A&M University, the University of Texas, Texas Christian University, and the Trinity University to allocate fundings to continue the Advise Texas College Advising Program?
So moved.
Thank you, Sam. May I have a second? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Members, agenda items 506 through 10, 5P1 through 4, 5Q1 through 6, and 5R1 are approved on the consent agenda. Agenda item 5R2 is consideration of possible adoption of new rules in Texas Administrative Code, Title 19, Chapter 4, Subchapter U, Rules 4.360 through 4.364 of rules concerning recommended course sequencing, developmental, institutional reporting. Dr. Stacy Silverman, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item and be available for questions. You moved. I was looking for you over there.
I was also sanitized.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed new rules concern the recommended course sequencing, development, and institutional reporting. Specifically, the new rules provide Texas public institutions of higher education with clarity on the development and reporting of recommended course sequencing for the undergraduate certificate and degree programs. The new section is proposed under Texas Education Code Section 51.96852, which provides the coordinating board with the authority to adopt rules relating to the development, reporting, and publication of recommended course sequences. The proposed new section affects the Texas Public Higher Institutions of Higher Education as defined in Texas Education Code, Section 61003, and the Coordinating Board. The Coordinating Board convened a negotiated rulemaking committee comprised of higher education institutional representatives with expertise in curriculum development, course sequencing, and institutional reporting. The negotiated rulemaking committee met once on March 9th to develop the proposed rules. The negotiated rulemaking committee developed the proposed rules in alignment with Texas Education Code 51.96852, which authorized the board to adopt the rules. The notice of the proposed rules were published in the Texas Register on May 7th and again on June 25th, and the comment period ended July 16th. No comments were received, and the recommendation is for approval.
Thank you. Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the adoption of new rules in Texas Administrative Code, Title 19, Chapter 4, Subchapter U, Rules 4.360 through 4.364 of board rules concerning recommended course sequencing, development, and institutional reporting? May I have a motion? Oh, Matthew, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
You're fine. So when I think of course sequences, particularly right now with the way transferability from community colleges to four-year institutions is becoming more and more important, I'm thinking, is this going to make it easier to streamline that process? Because if they have recommended course sequences, will it make it easier for students to transfer their credits from one institution to another? Because when you look at transferability, let's say from like Texas State to University of Houston or UT to A&M, they will often have different course names, and it makes it hard to understand what courses will match what.
You are absolutely correct. In this, these new rules are part of what was passed by the 86th Texas Legislature in Senate Bill 2025, which was the transfer bill. So, in fact, yes, you're absolutely right. We anticipate this helping students and parents and advisors, and we're very excited about the implementation of this requirement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And again, Matthew, I apologize. I didn't hear you. Going back, I have a motion and I have a second, right? That was a discussion?
Well, we used the motion. I'll make the motion.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry about that. I am lost up here.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 6 is adjournment. If there are no further discussions, may I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? I'll second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Now we'll take a short break to allow staff to set up for the Agency Operations Committee meeting. Members, please remain on the call.